I wanna bring you today my updated build for the Pyromancer Psyker. I exchanged a few things and made a more well-rounded version. Especially in AoE clear time and survivability, it performs better than the old version. As always, I try to bring you also some alternative setups, but if you have any recommendations or questions, let me know in the comments below. First, I would put 25 points into Psi Focus for the cooldown reduction and the beneficial warp anomalies. Next, max out your resilience for the damage reduction. And lastly, get 10 points in Force for 25% damage bonus, since we are all the time at the max warp heat. For perks, I choose first the Puritan. It gives us a nice energy shield and gives us heat damage bonus. But if you are not a Puritan Psyker, if you go Radical, you can choose instead Call the Weak or Warp Heat Conversion, and you will also get a nice damage bonus. If you want more survivability, you could choose this one, so you get more beneficial warp anomalies, or you can get this one. This one gives you another 20% life drain. Next, Blessing of Saint Victorious, as always a must-have for playing high-level missions. And lastly, Mind Rift 2, so you get another 90% damage bonus, since we are always in unhinged warp state. Since we will be in unhinged warp state all the time, we want high defenses. And we will have even more when buffs are up. Crit chance in the 30s. So when our triggers are up, it goes into the 50 range often. And crit strength over 46, so we get the damage bonus. Lastly, you want a good amount of cooldown reduction, so we can spam our spells. Here we get our enrage tokens. Most of our attacks are AoE, so boosted whenever possible. And we also have our shock and slow debuff source here. Next, on our eye implant, we boost our enrage token damage, also boosting our crit by a lot and more AoE damage. Main implant, boosting the enrage token damage more, and we can roll attributes on here. Try to get supreme crit chance as the secondary roll here, and socket AoE damage and effectiveness. Since we are using a melee weapon, we get shield drain, so this enchant will be very good to keep our suppression up. Here we can roll a lot of defenses and cooldown reduction. Psychic Focus, so we get another spell slot. The Fear in 5 meters is very useful, since we teleport with our Ether Blade around, we can easily go in close range and apply it. And with the Fear Aura, we can also apply general vulnerabilities immediately. If you want to understand how this works, you can check out my advanced player guide. Suppression on hit and effectiveness is great here. Fear on hit for targets that are further than 5 meters away. And a boost to our fear effectiveness. The burn isn't really necessary. Socket the same as before. Get any warp bound armor for another spell slot. I chose this enchant. The Rosarius field makes us invincible, and we can even trigger it a lot with our own bad warp anomalies, as you can see here. We can get a lot of defenses and more supreme crit chance. As you can see with those 3 items, we get already 15% supreme crit chance. I recommend using the Heat Psalm Doctrine here. But if you want to be even more defensive, you could exchange it for the ethereal one. With this inoculator, we get a huge suppression damage reduction boost. so we can get to the max of 75%. In my last build I used the Redemption, which is still great. If you have it, you can use it to get another big damage boost if you use 2 or more Psykons. But our damage without it is good enough. And with this one we have a safer build. And people who didn't get the Redemption last season have a good alternative. Most important here is the cooldown on kill and the attributes. I'm using here Blood Balm, 2 Psykons and 1 Hold Fast. For sockets I'm using the same as before. The Telekinetic Rod is my favorite since the attack is piercing and knockback and knockdowns enemies. This time I went with the Stunned Explosion enchant. It really helps to speed up clear times. As an alternative you could go with this enchant or this one. Get crit chance and crit strength first, and most importantly socket this doctrine, so you will always stun enemies. Our other weapon is the Ether Blade for the teleport. It also allows us to get shield and life drain. Socket in here the Heat Aura. I chose this enchant so we get even more Rosarius fields. But if you want to, you could also exchange it for another damaging enchant. The first signum gives damage per enrage token. Get crit chance and cooldown reduction first on here. Our second signum is the general vulnerability on debuff 1. Also get crit chance and cooldown reduction first on here. And this one is very easy applied with our Fear Aura. As our secondary weapon, use any staff, so we can apply buffs here. The AoE tree, we get a lot of damage bonus here. And a nice cooldown reduction with this one. 2 points in psychic debuffs, so we get the armor piercing. In psychic combat, we want those. So we can enhance our spells with them. Max out the critical hit tree. Four points in damage over time tree. So we can disable enemy HP regeneration. And we get another 20% damage reduction. The heat tree. So we get more damage bonus here. With this one we will apply burn with all our spells, and we get our heat vulnerability source here. In the support tree we get another HP gain here, and from the crit tree we get this one, so we will always reduce our warp heat and gain HP with this one. In the debuff tree we get another nice crit chance boost, a good damage boost here, some damage reduction here, and our spells will be armor piercing, so we also get this one. A few points in the movement tree, so we get cooldown reduction here and here. And in the defense tree get this one. Lastly, 1 point in the Puritan tree, but this one is not really important. Spontaneous Combustion. This will be our single target attack to deal with champion and boss enemies. It gets 1000% damage boost against burning targets. A socket armor piercing. Suppression damage boost, since the champions and boss enemies all have suppression bars. And lastly, power effectiveness, so it deals more damage. As an alternative you could use Molten Beam instead. Next, Firestorm. It's a decent AoE attack and applies dot. Also put effectiveness in here to increase the damage, armor piercing, and cooldown reduction, since the cooldown is a bit high. Inferno. This one will be persistent for 20 seconds. So we want to socket cooldown reduction here with this, we can keep it below the duration. For the others, just socket armor piercing again and power effectiveness. Lastly, extermination. It's also a column of fire like Inferno. It stays active for 5 seconds and is spammable. Here we can socket shield drain, which we cannot socket in the Inferno. This can be very helpful to keep our shields up. For our buffs we want this one. This one gives us a death protection and will revive us. Here we socket cooldown reduction, so we can use it more often. Movement speed and increased base damage. Our second buff is endurance. Here we get more max HP and HP regeneration, socket effectiveness, supreme warp resist and movement speed. You could exchange movement speed for damage boost here. Our last buff is Fiery Form. It gives us another heat aura and gives us supreme heat resist and together 50% damage bonus. Socket again effectiveness, movement speed and supreme warp resist. With the supreme warp resist here and here, we can go to 75%. Since we have armor piercing on every spell, we don't really need to use Misfortune. It would be only useful if you want to apply it on your weapon skill attack. Lastly, you can use this one. It doesn't count as a buff and gives you a free energy shield. Let's have a look at the 118 mission now.
The very existence of this filth defiles the Imperium. They may be great in numbers, but if we sever the head, the body will die. Kill their leaders and break their will. He deserved worse, much worse. The head. Now you can watch the body wander aimlessly until it withers and dies.